All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Solar Sundays, where we discuss current events and all sorts of other random topics from a solar perspective. I'm joined here by Ed, aka FiA Taurmenos. Welcome to the chat. We're going to be talking about cryptids tonight. It should be a lot of fun. But first of all, we got some announcements from the Order of Fire stuff. First of all, the new Journal of Solar Culture, the Pater anthology book 3 is now out on Kindle. I just dropped a link to that in the live chat. We'll put a link in the comments later, so you can go check that out. Ed's got some stuff in there. I've got an essay and a poem in there that you might enjoy about the Ukrainian knife fight. My essay was handwritten this year, sort of an interesting experiment in style there. And there's all kinds of great stuff in there to check out. And also, as far as the culture goes, Temple Tribe and GADA put out a new track together. I think they're doing more stuff later called Wait. It's really good. It's really, really, really good ambiance music and stuff to work out and drive to, in my opinion, anyways. So definitely check that out. That's also in the live chat. Ed, how are you doing tonight?
I am all right. Starting to warm up a little bit on the East Coast.
Yeah, it's starting to warm up out here too. It's like in the mid 50s. The kids are outside playing. It was although all the winter cryptids are going away.
Yeah.
It's we don't need to be that ham-fisted about it. It's the subject came up earlier, like right after we finished the last one, actually, because we've talked so much about stories and myth, and we talked about the Santa cult, stories people live by but don't quite believe in. And I can't remember, were we talking with the Carex, or were we talking on our own apart about
we were talking on our own, and if you're talking about something like cryptids, Acarix will come up in the conversation.
Will come up, yes.
Because he is the living embodiment of I want to believe.
Not quite a true believer, but a live-byer. They're fun, and although we're divided by country, we both are in nominally the same region, which is to say, because you can break down cryptids by region, we're in Sasquatch region. We're in the lovely Pacific Northwest, home of the Sasquatch, home of Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, although your region might vary. Cryptids are fun because we've in the age of the internet, it seems like we've seen some new ones. It seems like we've got like Slender Man and Skinwalkers and stuff that like didn't exist 20 years ago, I don't think. It seems to have been created by the internet, and the internet has become a new geographic space for these things to develop. Because one of the most interesting things about cryptids as story characters is that they seem very geographically specific. Wendigos are an East Coast thing. They're not. Do you know the origin of the Wendigo story?
Not really, no. The closest one to where I am is probably the Mothman in West Virginia. And then here, right where I am, there's the Blair Witch, but that's not really a cryptid. That's a woman.
Well, it's kind of a fine line, right? Because if you're in Transylvania, is a vampire a cryptid, or like what is it?
Well, I mean,
cryptid if you're outside the region. But my understanding of the story of the Wendigo was that there was a Amerindian tribal family over on the East Coast, and alcohol was involved, and the husband and father wound up killing and eating his family, partially eating his family, and he had some bout of madness. And this was a semi-historical account. It's hard to verify these kinds of stories, but apparently it was a real story. And the story of a of a man who goes mad and eats people, who's like this kind of wild man, took off and then it developed, and now he's tall and now he's slender. Now he has like deer antlers, and it just sort of grew and built until it became the version that we see in like TV shows and stuff now. But just the sort of lineage of these stories and how they evolve and grow is its own interesting part of the cryptid story genre, I think.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah. Well, I could be getting it wrong. Someone, if I'm getting that wrong, someone in the chat corrects me on that. But it's what's cool about cryptids is that like we live in, you know, everyone talks about world is like more like interconnected and international, and we have a kind of universal culture. Everyone speaks English, or, you know, Mandarin, or, you know, like 2 or 3 other languages, but it's mostly like English. And there are fewer and fewer religions. We're down to like, you know, 4 or 5 main ones, and then there's like some sporadic, you know, you've got schisms and stuff, but everything seems to be converging on singular points and singular stories and all this. But cryptids, although there's a commonality to their structure, there's a commonality to the kind of essence of the thing, they seem to be very organic, very pagan in the old sense, paganus, very, very like of the country outside, which is not to say that you can't have urban cryptids.
Sure. And cryptid comes from Greek, from cryptos.
Well, and specifically, we should take some time to be nerdy at the expense of some Redditor who's be like, they're doing it wrong, because technically, with the alternating caps, cryptid refers to animals studied by cryptozoologists. So if we're being super technical, cryptids are not, you know, mythical supernatural creatures. Cryptids are things like the mountain gorilla or the giant panda before they became officially acknowledged by science. So people who say that Sasquatch is a cryptid are like, no, but it's a real animal. We've seen it and stuff. It's just not fully acknowledged yet. It's like, well,
same with the
maybe
the Yeti in the Himalayas.
And but you could have said the giant squid was a cryptid, perhaps.
But some of them, some of the cryptids technically do have certain supernatural powers, because it is, going back to you mentioning how it's geographical. A lot of that has to do with what is the flora and fauna of a particular region, right? And then also what is the base sort of like cultural sort of thing around, you know, what is possibly real and what isn't. Like India has a whole bunch of cryptids that are like ghosts. You know, there's like a tiger ghost, a fish ghost.
Yeah. See, the hardcore cryptozoologists will be like, those aren't cryptids, those are superstitions or whatever. We're talking about real animals. And
well, what about chupacabra?
Right. I mean, well, and jackalopes, right? But I think
I grew up in chupacabra land.
The important thing is that there's a similarity in the kind of knowledge. When we're talking about cryptids, whether we're talking about the colloquial sense of skinwalkers and Sasquatch and chupacabra and jackalopes and other dangerous critters like that, or if we're talking about vampires and werewolves and truly supernatural things, we are in both cases talking about knowledge that comes from folklore, knowledge that comes from secondhand accounts and personal experience sometimes, as opposed to knowledge that is scientific, knowledge that is empirically verified and so forth. And so for all the distinctions that cryptozoologists might want to make between the two, there is a similarity in the kind of knowledge that might make them uncomfortable, because they're like, well, we're trying to be serious. It's like, well, that's fine. But where is the line between serious and not serious? Is it just the like how plausible it sounds on its face? Because there are many accounts. There's a funny book, a debate book on the question of gods between Vox Day, who's a Christian, and I forget who his interlocutor was, but the interlocutor said there are more accounts, eyewitness accounts of UFOs than there are of like Jesus and the resurrection and so forth. And Vox Day just ate that argument. He says, yeah, it's possible UFOs are out there too. There are, problems epistemologically with trusting certain kinds of eyewitness accounts in certain contexts. But the problem is that many of the tools that we use to discount eyewitness accounts discount real things. And in the name, in the pursuit of like not being wrong, so that no one can ever chastise you for believing something stupid, you can throw away and dismiss things that might be serious with a kind of what's the word, with the kind of superiority complex of that comes from, well, at least I didn't believe something that was unjustified first. And there's like trade-offs here to make epistemologically. How much do you trust your own subjective senses versus how much do you trust the data or the numbers? Can you be fooled by? We don't need to go down the whole science rabbit hole. I think that's less interesting, but I think it is interesting to point out the similarity in the kind of knowledge at work with cryptozoological animals like giant squids or Sasquatch, perhaps, versus supernatural critters like werewolves and vampires, because there are lots of accounts of those too. Less accounts of scorpion men from Gilgamesh, but there's at least one that goes back a long way. So,
have you seen Sasquatch?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. But it's crazy because when you're out in the woods and you see things you don't immediately recognize, your mind can play tricks on you very quickly. I had the experience of seeing, I wasn't even out in the woods. This is at the house I grew up in. It was just down the street. It was within line of sight of my parents' house. I happened to be out on my bicycle riding down the street, and I looked up and I saw something moving behind my neighbor's yard. And my brain didn't immediately register what it was. So it did this. I can remember it very vividly running through a kind of like flow chart of like, is it this? Is it that? And it was like, is it a fox? And I'm like, no, it's too big to be a fox and its tail's wrong. Is it a dog? No, its head's wrong. It's a cougar. And like, it took me like a full second to register what this like tan animal moving up behind my neighbor's yard was. And it happened to be in like completely unobstructed. It was about 60 yards away, I would guess. So I started riding in slow circles on my bike because I didn't want to like run away from it. It was an adolescent. It was a small one. And as soon as it, went back, I like raced home, grabbed my bow and arrow because I was an idiot. I was also like 12, and went out after it again. Thankfully, we didn't see it after that, but it was like that moment of not registering what it is that you're seeing is a phenomenological experience everyone should go through at least once, I think, and recognize that sort of flowchart process of trying to identify this thing you haven't seen before.
Yeah.
Because if you've had that experience, if you're primed to interpret certain ambiguous visual stimuli in a particular category, that is where your brain is going to go. So
I mean,
if you're,
it's happened to me in the UFO sense. Years ago, somewhere I was on the West Coast, where the sky is bigger, and than the East Coast, and there I was driving, and there were these lights in the sky, all part of one thing. It turned out afterwards that it was like a blimp with a bunch of stuff going on with it, but it was positioned just right in the sky at this angle where looking up at it, it was full close encounters type of situation. It was like, what is that? I had to pull over my car and just stop and like watch it. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And then eventually it kind of turned and I was like, oh, it's a blimp. But it also happened a year ago at our fire ritual in Arizona with Starlink. We were all around the fire. You were there.
Yeah.
We were all around the fire, and I'm like, there are spaceships flying overhead right now. Should I say something? Or should I just look at the fire? And then, somebody that was there knew what it was, and they're like, oh, that's Starlink. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Well, we saw a number of weird ones out there, not satellites, but like odd things. Because the thing that caught my attention the most was I was in pest control for a little while, and so I have a very, very peripheral background in not just etymology but also entomology, study of insects. And I've become particularly fond of a scientist named Justin Schmidt, who we've talked about him before, but he took it upon himself to rank insect stings on the pain scale. And so from his research, I was familiar with some fairly serious insects in the insect world. So we were out in the desert anyways, and Druvor was like, oh yeah, these beetles are like massive, man. They really hit you close. And I was like looking around, we're seeing all these black insects with red wings kind of flying around. I'm like, I don't think those are beetles. And I got a much closer look. It hit one of them. One of them hit someone in the face and just kind of bounced off and kept going. I don't remember who it was, but I got a much closer look at them. I realized these aren't beetles. They're wasps. They're solitary wasps. I was like, those are tarantula hawks. Those are a 4 on the pain scale index. You do not want to get stung by those. That will give you a bad day for days. That is a top 10 no bueno experience out in the desert. And there were hundreds of them all around us, but they were just minding their business. And I imagine if someone were to get stung by that, and it's a big insect, it's a flying tank, going by you. If someone were to run into one of those for the first time and piss it off and get stung, that could be the seeds for something that would grow into a larger story over the years, until it eventually becomes we're at Twilight and this giant insect came out and, Paul damn near died, or, something. You can imagine the evolution of these stories out of that. At least that's how it goes in my imagination anyways.
Big fish stories.
Yes, and like that, fish is a fun one because the water makes everything so much scarier. Imagine the first person on like a Lewis and Clark expedition who ran into an alligator snapping turtle. Like what do you make of that? Are you familiar with the Lewis and Clark story of the grizzly bear? The first time they ran into a grizzly bear. So they had dealt with black bears before, and that was like no big deal. But out on the plains, this is they're going up the Mississippi, and they're past the Appalachians out into the beginnings of what was to become like plains country. And I don't remember the precise details of how it came about, but they run into a grizzly bear. And they almost don't manage to kill this thing. It charges them and they're opening up and it is just not going down and they're terrified. Eventually someone manages to get it in the eye and that brings it down. But it's and those are like 50 cal musket balls that they're shooting so no joke as far as the ammunition, but it's a serious animal. The name for bear, I think if you go back to the Proto-Indo-European, is one of these kinds of Voldemort, he who shall not be named, kind of taboo euphemisms, so that they don't invoke it, because the bear was this like terrifying supernatural creature that you like, no one knows how to deal with them. So we don't invoke the name for fear of summoning him by mistake. Borderline, you know, supernatural horror story cryptid, except it's real, you know. One of my kids' favorite, they were actually just watching it earlier today, is the Disney movie Brave. So actually very good Disney movie about you know, this brother gets turned into a bear, and it's a very supernatural demon bear, and then, you know, generation later, a young girl accidentally turns her mother into a bear for the same kind of family schism kind of reason. It's a great movie, great story, but like the bears are no joke, and they have all the makings of like a supernatural cryptid horror, except it's real, you know.
Well, and for, you know, in the case of, you know, like Lewis and Clark and people like that, they were like the first of their own kind, perhaps, to encounter an animal like that.
And I'm forgetting the Song of Hugh Glass, The Revenant.
Say that again?
The Song of Hugh Glass. It was an epic poem written on the model of Homer. It was written in 1918 by I'll have to remember the book. Cycle of the Plains, Song of Hugh Glass. I'll get the name later, but basically it's anyone who's seen the movie The Revenant knows the story. It's the movie The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio was based on this poem about a hunter and trapper who got abandoned by his friends basically after he got mauled by a bear. And it has this American Gothic borderline supernatural quality. Maybe that's the best cryptid in American literature, is the white whale, with Herman Melville, because that is a quasi supernatural creature from the depths, and there's a lot of like theology that is like right underneath the surface, so to speak, with that story. And you could maybe say something similar about the Song of Hugh Glass. There's an element of menace, an element of like divine retribution at work there, that all the great American Gothic writers have, whether it's like from Cormac McCarthy all the way back to Nathaniel Hawthorne and Herman Melville and before even. So there's something about the geography that is at work in those stories that give them their vitality. As an aside, I feel like that's one of my favorite novels that's come out in the last decade or so was Chuck Palahniuk's Adjustment Day. It's funny, but it's also a great attempt at answering the question of like, what is an American? I'm getting a little sidetracked here, but I mean, cryptids have to do with storytelling a little bit. Yeah. And it's a great book, and it's a great book about like what is America at the bottom of it. But the one thing I think it's lacking is this sense of the numinous and a sense of transcendent forces above and beyond just the humans at work there, which makes it, I think, more relatable, but it keeps it from the like below the ranks of like a Cormac McCarthy. Anyone who's seen like No Country for Old Men, like Javier Bardem's character, that Anton Chigurh, like he's a little bit more than just human, you know. He represents something that is above and beyond that. All the great like Gothic stories have that.
I like that word, numinous. I like it a lot. It came up when we were before
second to last week, with the about religion, about us being a religion. When conversations that we had about that, numinous was a word that I thought about a lot because it's an awe, a type of awe that is separate from transcendence. I also thought of the word imminent, not imminent as in any moment or pressing, but
yes,
imminence as well.
Yeah. Numinous is a fun word because it's one that Christopher Hitchens used to invoke. He would say atheists are perfectly capable of appreciating the numinous. And my understanding as like a teenager and early 20s listening to Christopher Hitchens describe that was like the sense that you get when you're standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and looking out, and you have a feeling in your gut of just the sheer magnificence of time and force that created this thing that you're looking at, and how small you are in the face of that. That was my sense of it. Numinous is sort of an interesting word because it's actually a Kantian word. Immanuel Kant differentiated the noumena from the phenomena. The noumena is what is, the phenomena is what we experience in relation to it. Mm. It's funny how these words have sort of shifted in meaning a little bit, because we now think of things as that have a supernatural or transcendent undertone to them as being numinous in some way. But that's almost like the opposite of what Kant meant it to be. He meant it in the sense of this unreachable objective plane of reality that our senses prevent us from fully, making contact with. We contact with it, but we can't know it fully. We're mediated by our senses, by the phenomena.
I mean, an extremely powerful electrical thunderstorm. Science can explain it all that it wants to, but it doesn't take away the experience of it. It's like, whether there's gods or not, science does not remove the terror of the gods.
Yeah, and it's almost that maybe numinous is not the right word for it, but there's a sense you get sometimes where like you suddenly feel as if you're in the presence of great or supernatural forces beyond your comprehension.
Or great, take away super, great natural forces.
Great natural forces, yes, yes.
Beyond exactly. your comprehension.
A great, I would say, Shinto example of this captured in film is like Hayao Miyazaki. If you watch like Princess Mononoke, there's this forest god who like passes through. It's this semi-mystical deer god creature thing with a eerily human-like face and like this sort of cancerous crown of antlers. It's a numinous creature that is I don't know how else to describe it, other than and you can get variations of degrees of this. I don't know if anyone listening to this has gone hunting and killed a large animal. I've never gotten a deer before, but I've gotten an elk. And when you kill an elk is a huge animal, and they're way bigger up close than they are from a distance. When you get up close to that and realize you killed it, it's a very heavy feeling. And you feel viscerally how much bigger this thing is than you. And it's very difficult to describe the feeling that comes along with that. other than a very intense feeling that like none of this is going to be wasted, right? But it's like that kind of weightiness, I think, is there. And I think what's attractive about cryptids, to bring it back to that, is like science has made everything not just known, but made it small by being known. And I think there's an allure to the idea that there are things out there that we don't fully know and don't fully understand.
There's still plenty of those.
Yeah. I was reading what was the poem? Song of the Happy Shepherd. I picked up a book yesterday by William Butler Yeats, because I've been getting kind of more into poetry, and he has this wonderful line in there about the way that science has made everything small in this way. Let me see if I can find the line. Apologies, I'm still recovering from this cold, so my voice is not what it could be. Where's the line about glass? Here we are. The no eyes worship dusty deeds, nor seek for this is also sooth, to hunger fiercely after truth. Lest all thy toiling only breeds new dreams, there is no truth, saving in thine own heart. Seek then no learning from the starry men, who follow with the optic glass the whirling way of stars that pass. Seek then, for this is also sooth, no word of theirs the cold star bane has cloven and rent their hearts in twain, and dead is all their human truth. So gather by the humming sea some twisted echo harboring shell, to its lips thy story tell. And I mean, it's not unique to Yeats, the observation that knowledge of a thing seems to kill the magic in it. But I think, and maybe you have a different take on this, to me, it seems like the wrong word to describe what it is that people are after when they're looking for magic in a story. Like, a story that has actual magic in it, like Harry Potter, for example. Like, the magic is not actually the magic they're looking for, because we can look at all kinds of books that are like second tier D grade fantasy that's like a copy of Lord of the Rings that's like in some mass marketed publishing churn out schedule, and that has magic in it, but it has no magic of this sort in it. So there's something of either the numinous, or the unknowable, or the grandiosity of something that we're looking for, that science maybe has taken away from our experience of our environment. I don't know.
I think, well, when it comes to certain, I think it might depend on who's the person speaking for the idea of science. There's a lot of, sort of the cosmic aspects of science where there really is not a lot known, but there's a lot of, sort of, trying to know going on. I think a lot of those people that are studying like galaxies far away, they seem to have a pretty big sense of wonder, at least when you see them on TV shows, And
yes.
Then, and they can kind of take you into that mood, when you.
Yeah, there's definitely different spirits in which you can pursue science. There are people, the sorts of, especially the astronomers, who are like lost, almost drunk on the magnitude of what we don't know, and just in perpetual awe of that. And there's like a very fine line between the like college stoner philosopher and that kind of enjoyment, but it's cool, to look up. And
what about Heidegger? College stoner philosopher.
Heidegger, like Heidegger is still a cryptid. I'm not even sure if Heidegger is real or not. Like I'm so baffled by it, like what he is exactly. I think he has a touch of that, but he's also, I think there's more to him than that. But I'm not sure.
There must be. But okay, cryptids. So have you had any conversations with your kids about cryptids? Have they come up, like Sasquatch, for instance, or like how do you deal with that? Like, let's say one of your kids is like, is Bigfoot real? I don't know.
So when my son was like 3, he learned about coyotes, and it was fascinating the way that story grew legs, because he was very worried that coyotes were like wolves that would like eat people. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're not going to bother you. They're, coyotes are off to find someone's chickens or something. But the story grew, and he started drawing pictures, and he arrived at this kind of amphibious dragon with 6 wings. It became kind of a family joke because all he was obsessed with were these dragon things that he called coyotes, which are not coyotes, not to be confused with coyotes. They're coyotes, which are like these, again, like these dragon creatures. I'm sure Jordan Peterson would have a lot to say about that. And the other big fear that's come up with, especially the girls, has been spiders, especially oversized spiders. So I've had to give them kind of lucid dreaming lessons. Excuse me, how to like deal with these dream creatures that come to them. And it's like, what's funny is I don't know if you've read the Harry Potter books or seen the movies.
I've seen
but the technique for dealing with what were the creature bogarts. The technique for dealing with bogarts is actually a very good way to deal with bad dreams. I didn't realize that until my wife pointed it out to me. I was basically teaching them like, oh, you can take this goofy chicken from Moana. There's this very stupid chicken character called Hey, I think. You can take that into your dreams, and chickens eat spiders. So it's like 2 things at once. Like one introduces humor, and humor just like eradicates fear. And also, chickens eat spiders. They know that we have chickens. They've seen them. So that was pretty effective. And we would, I'd talk them through that. And there's different ways of helping kids through that, but it's mostly the dreams that were the issue with cryptids. Besides the coyote and the imaginatively expanded coyote concept, I haven't had to deal with.
You have a family cryptid.
This coyote.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a cryptid in the family. So I mean, so cryptids, like, is this, so are we, when it comes to the idea of it, like, okay, is it just like, psyop stuff, or is it linked with, our human imagination that is connected to the power of myth in our lives?
I think it's much more the latter.
Is it secret knowledge? Is it the secret knowledge thing that ties in with all the other kinds of secret knowledge? Like flat Earth or ancient aliens?
No, because I think
or all the above.
The thing about cryptids is that, one, they seem to be a universal. They seem to be a human universal in our storytelling, and there isn't a universal cryptid. There's all different varieties of them, which to me seem, when you look at something in language that independently evolves on its own, that's like an indication of a real concept. So that doesn't mean cryptids are real. It means that the attraction of cryptids in storytelling and in the imagination is universal and not a psyop. Now, that doesn't mean people can't. Well,
we've ruled out the CIA. That's good.
I mean, so there are fun stories. Like there was an account of the Maxog V, which was like the elite. I don't think they were CIA, but CIA might have been working with them on this. Created vampires in Southeast Asia when they were fighting down there. And they did this by leaving particular signs that played upon certain superstitions of the village. That was the thing that they did. So you can employ this natural tendency, and it can be used against people to create vampires. But like the belief and the tendency precedes the psyop, I think, and I think that says something about what we're attracted to in storytelling and what captures our imagination, and maybe just how we think about things in general, how we think about our environment, how we think about the dangers out there beyond the perimeter, in the dark, especially, or in the deep, in the water.
Yeah. So what about the type of person that is really obsessed and not just obsessed with one?
Oh yes.
But constantly looking that they're focusing completely on more and more of it. Like I'm thinking, I was watching Ancient Aliens earlier this afternoon. They're pretty obsessed. I mean, it's a TV show, but it's like any possible thing. They spent 45 minutes on scarabs from Egypt, and like, why are these dung beetles like they walk in this exact direction towards this constellation, and it just deeper and deeper and deeper.
I think what it is, it's like the single biggest rule I've discovered myself fighting against in the world of philosophy is the idea that the opposite of a falsehood is the truth. Exactly. Or put another way, any one thing has only one opposite.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's a very, very common fallacy. Basically all of all of Hegel's dialectic can be understood within this frame, and Kant's dialectic that preceded it, and Rousseau's dialectic that Kant borrowed it from. And I think Christianity largely falls apart on this. Most people arrive at Christianity, when they arrive at serious belief, not from the observation of objective good, but from the observation of objective evil, which I think is real. And then they infer from the observation of objective evil that there must therefore be an antithesis, an equal or perhaps greater objective good. And that is very intuitive, and it is actually a non sequitur. And in the same way, I think many people look at the mainstream narrative as if there's only one. And they say, well, they lied to me about this one thing, which they do, maybe more than one thing, actually. Therefore, like, the opposite must be true. What else aren't they telling us? And anything that the mainstream people dismiss must be true because they're trying to hide it from you. And of course, the mainstream people are trying to have legitimacy. So they're going to dismiss things that are obvious quackery because they want to look good, even if they're going to be lying to you about other things. It's like, just because a bad person dismisses something or a stupid person dismisses something doesn't mean it therefore must be true, but I think some people really become captured by that mode of thinking, and they just get further and further, and they're like, well, how far can I take this? Retrospectively, it would have predicted this if I just, and there's like a confirmation bias that creeps in.
We're seeing that in the political sense currently.
Yeah, and people are being primed
very dramatically. In fact, this week,
people are being primed to accept this too. They think, conspiracy theorists were all right about everything. It's like, only if you ignore like 90% of them. You know, it's the same bias, I think, when people say, oh, music is such crap now, and they'll go back and play like a pop song from the 80s, and it's like, it's one of the remembered ones, so it's really good. And then they compare it to something on the radio today, and it's like, you realize the radio in the 80s wasn't just playing that one good song. There was a bunch of crap stuff back then too. But that like rosy retrospective goggles, we only look back at the good stuff. And in the same way, I think we forget all of the conspiracy theories that were like nonsense. One of the ones that Scott Adams mentioned that he enjoyed following was the story about giants that were discovered. Oh, they've discovered the bones of giants. And every time there would always be these very grainy photos of the giant skeletons. It's like, well, why look at photos of their skeletons if we can just look at the skeletons? But miraculously, the skeletons would always disappear under mysterious circumstances, along the way. These great finds were never like, they never managed to preserve any of them, but we've got all kinds of photos of them, very like grainy
like the Buddha statues and Egyptian mummies and hieroglyphics that were found inside of a sealed cave in the Grand Canyon in the late 1800s.
Right.
That's a big,
I don't even need to look into that. I know exactly how the story goes without looking into it.
It's very intriguing, actually, because the Smithsonian Institution was involved as well, but it was all made to disappear to keep the information from us, and
all they don't want you to know.
There's only writings related to this one particular man, and the man himself was disappeared as well. He suddenly
the CIA just really.
There wasn't a CIA in like 1888.
Well, the OSS, I don't know. The CIA doesn't want you to know that the CIA was,
but we're seeing that phenomenon you were just discussing this week with a certain really big world event. Like it's always like, it's like, oh, the idea of that, okay, something is bad has to automatically have an opposite good and vice versa. That's happening with Iran, really. Like, oh, we stand for these things. This is being done by what we consider to be the antithesis of good. Therefore, it has to be bad also.
Well, and what's funny about that mode of thinking too, is that where it winds up is that it gets so conspiratorial that any information that becomes publicly accepted has to be rejected on its face, because whoever they happens to be, whether it's the Jews, the CIA, or the Illuminati, or whoever, they won't let the public know. So if the public comes to know something, then it must not be the real answer. So you're in this kind of like punk, like, oh, they went mainstream, so they're not cool anymore, like perpetual digging for new explanations. And anytime anything becomes publicly accepted, it's no longer like legit or valid. And it's childishly easy to flip this around too. Like one conspiracy theory that I kind of lean towards is that flat Earth was advanced intentionally to discredit other conspiracy theories. Like there are many valid conspiracy theories, but if we can push this flat Earth idea and promote it in the same circles as other people who think, for example, maybe Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. I don't know, just throwing it out there. It's a possibility. Then all of these people in this circle can be lumped in with the people who think the world isn't even around. And
ball sunning was created by some secret force in order to discredit, fitness and health.
Right. Right. And what's funny is like that is, we can't prove any of these, obviously. But we can point to established methods. And there was a paper co-written by Cass Sunstein and Adrian Vermeule back in 2007, if I remember correctly, on how to deal with extremists. And he said the problem with dealing with extremists is that disagreeing with them basically reinforces their belief. Like, this is why they send Mormons out to proselytize. It's not because they think these 18-year-old Mormon kids are going to like convert people on your doorstep. It's to get that repetitive feeling of rejection by the world that creates an in-group dynamic of belonging within the church that does not reject you. Right. And it's an in-group, out-group reinforcement exercise. So what Adrian Vermeule and Cass Sunstein wrote is that the way to break these extremist views is to join them, to go undercover within them, and then to basically blow them up from the inside, and to lead them into more extreme versions. And shortly thereafter, Adrian Vermeule converted to Catholicism and led the Catholic version, tried to jump in front of the Catholic version of Christian nationalism, which is called integralism. And he became a leader of that, the Christian nationalist movement. So the method is there. The method is real. Whether it's at work in any individual instance, we obviously can't know one way or another. But it's something that conspiracy theorists should be mindful of. It's like maybe you are an unwitting part of the conspiracy. If you dismiss regular, like, epistemic standards for belief and just go by sort of reverse Kramer trading reality, you can wind up as part of the conspiracy in your attempt to fight the conspiracies. So
yeah, maybe the
reverse Kramer trading reality a new phrase. That's good.
Maybe the conspiracy
cut that
is for you.
Or clip that. There we go.
Maybe the conspiracy is for you to be believing in conspiracies.
Yeah.
It's like holding a mirror up to a mirror. You're just going to go deeper and deeper. What's the lesson?
Well, I don't know if there is a lesson though. Because on the one hand, like, there's a danger of going too far the other way. It's like, oh, I should always follow the science. It's like, well, that can be controlled. There's a great line in, I can't remember which of Nietzsche's book, but there's a great quote that Nietzsche says in one of his books on superstition, and superstition always being the sign of a free thinking society. And it's like, I forget how it actually goes, but the idea is that people will go to semi-crazy places when they have the freedom to think. That doesn't mean everything they say is crazy. The way I think of it is like, all original thinkers tend to be wrong more often than they're right, because that's just what happens when you're at the cutting edge of things. But you don't get new information or new ideas without them paying that price a little bit. So if you dismiss the wrong ideas, or the 5 degrees too crazy, if you dismiss that out of hand, then you also forego the brilliance and the genius that might be at work that comes along with it. And the stale and stagnant certainty, which is often less certain than you would think, of like established knowledge, it doesn't have the life and vitality that the free thinking that brings along superstition. It brings forth cryptids.
It's from the gay science. It's from the gay science.
That's probably my favorite Nietzsche book.
Yeah.
Gay science is amazing.
Free thinking of the second rank, a potential sign of cultural progress away from rigid, inherited religious dogmas.
Oh, do you have the full quote there?
That's not the quote, but that's like the gist of the quote. But it was like he saw it as a second-hand form of free thinking. Okay.
Which is like maybe not as good as the first form, but it's we all have our limitations, and it's also fun to live in that world. And I think maybe this is a fun way to conclude it. Carl Sagan wrote a book called Demon Haunted World with the subtitle Science is a Candle in the Dark. And it's that's a very mythical language. He describes science as like this small candle that, creates light. And it's actually very solar. It's actually very like within our view, but the epistemic methods at work there hinge upon myth that his project seeks to destroy. And he explicitly describes science as a myth-destroying endeavor. We're going to break illusions because that's where fear and hatred come from. And the reality is that you're destroying the foundations of your own project. You're destroying the fire itself when you destroy that myth. So while the purpose was to rid ourselves of the demons, and the demon haunted world is what we want to escape, the reality is that maybe the fire is lit by demons. Maybe we do live in a demon haunted world. Maybe that's what the fire illuminates. Okay, what then? Let's bring on the demon hunters. Let's shine a light on the cryptids, so to speak, and face them. Face that part of our storytelling, that part of our imagination. Why do our minds go there? Why do our stories go there? Why are there scorpion men in Gilgamesh? Why is there proto-werewolf mythology in Book 10 of the Iliad? Need we even get into the cryptids in the Odyssey, of which there are many. And as you mentioned before, in Indic mythology, where most of the gods would be what we would call cryptids.
Some of the most important ones, yeah.
Some would say half of India is cryptid.
They're not evil. They're benevolent.
Well, some of them are. Do you know? Do you know the number one country for wolf deaths in the world?
Tell me.
It's not Russia. It's not Georgia. It's not Mongolia. It's India.
I mean, they're a big problem in certain areas there.
I would never have guessed. I didn't know there were wolves in India. I should have known because I saw the Jungle Book growing up. But
they're all over. But obviously in the northwest, wolves are a major theme of dangerous outsiders in Rig Veda. The wolf is like a big symbol of somebody outside of the perimeter.
Yeah, and the wolf man, the werewolf, goes back a very, very, very long ways. That's a very ancient. I don't even know if that's a cryptid, really. That's like its own literary leitmotif. Mixing my genres there. Well, that seems like a good place to end it. We can talk about werewolves and other mythological creatures another time. They don't seem geographically constrained enough to be true cryptids, but maybe that depends on the werewolf. Well, that seems like a good spot to end it. Anything else to add?
No.
Well, thanks for joining us on this fun exploration. It's fun. I think there's cryptids is a fun thing. It should be a nice break from war with Iran or whatever is going on in the world right now. It's good to step back, think about the world of the stories we live in, and so take a break occasionally from the supposedly true things going on in the world. There's a great. We'll save simulacra for another time. Baudrillard is fun. Thanks so much for joining us. Do check out Temple Tribe and GADA's new track. It's great, fantastic 3.5-minute track. Check out.
Find it wherever you would find music otherwise.
Yep, I posted the YouTube link. Check out the new Pater Volume 3, the Journal of Solar Culture, live on Kindle. It should be out in paperback later this month. So thanks so much for listening. Stay solar.
Stay solar.
Thank you for watching or listening to the Journal of Solar Culture. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and leave us a comment. The first volume of our journal is available in paperback and now, finally, on Kindle. Pick it up in our store or on Amazon.